I made space for myself. And what I realized in that process was if you don't make space for yourself, how can you make space for anybody else? And once you make that space for yourself, you can then make space for nature. Hey, my name is Daniel Mitchell. I'm the co-founder of Space Available, and we're here in Canggu, Bali, in the Space Available HQ. So Space Available is essentially a creative platform where we kind of experiment in the realms of circular design, sort of sustainable and regenerative practices, and ultimately we're building a collective or a community of like-minded individuals, from bioscientists, from designers, artists, environmentalists, who kind of all coming together to collaborate to ultimately build a better future and explore new system design and better ways of doing things.
Tell me about the importance of unlearning things and the educational part of what your mission is.
Yeah, well, obviously things, like since the Industrial Revolution, there's a lot of great things have happened between now and then in terms of the growth, poverty levels. Even though it's still an absolute disaster, things are improving for a lot of people, however, not everybody. And along the way of, accelerating this growth on a global scale, there's been a lot of mistakes that we've made in getting there. And we feel that, in the norms of day-to-day life, there was a lot of things that we knew weren't quite right. And obviously climate crisis is looming. That's the biggest threat that we have right now. And, we're sort of specifically looking into, waste management, water pollution, and various sort of social aspects of that as well. And when the pandemic hit, we felt, okay, well, this could be the space that we need, that we're looking for, a space that we didn't have before. There's a sort of new space available in order for us to, reconnect, reimagine, and redesign how, the future could look, So we sort of thought, okay, well, this, could be an opportunity where there's clearly, we hope there'll be some sort of planetary awakening where a lot of people are like, okay, fuck, the world stopped thinking differently about things. And in those times of disruption in history, it's shown that in major disruptions, that's when big ideas generally grow. And of course, we want the sort of good ideas as opposed to the bad ideas. So the platform's very much set up to kind of use this space to try and instigate change, positive change, and do what we can in order to explore new system design, new ways of doing things, and collaborating with people, artists, people in the cultural landscape to instigate that change. But whilst we're doing that, we also want to educate in the process. So if we're making this chair, for example, which is made out of recycled plastic waste and bamboo, there's a real sort of story in this in terms of where the plastic comes from, how we made it, and for us, when we're making this, rather than just sort of doing it behind the scenes, we want to bring the process to life and do, workshop videos. We're going to be doing sort of physical classes in this space, really so people can learn ultimately. And, without education, then, we're not going to see any long-term change. So education is a very important aspect to us, as is what we're doing now, having a conversation, just as important, and ultimately collaboration. And they're the three sort of pillars that we work within in order to try and build that change that we're trying to do.
Talk to me a little bit more about this chair that I'm looking at. I understand this is from a local artist. I don't know how comfortable you are about talking about that other piece as well.
Yeah, we can talk about it, yeah. So, well, this specific chair I'm sitting on is a collaboration between ourselves, Space Available, and a local artist called Nano Uhiro. And as you can see, Nano is an incredible weaver. He's got the ancient skills and of craft that him and his family have honed for centuries, and God knows how long here in Bali. And Space Available bringing a slightly sort of, let's call it a modern design sensibility because of obviously my background of living in different parts of the world, where I could never ever weave a chair like this. However, I could draw it up how it could look. I could imagine how it could look, but I need Nano to come and actually physically make the chair, and that for us is the collaboration. And Nano is very much unheard of outside of Bali. I mean, even in Bali, he's not that well recognized, and it's somebody that we'd like to try and elevate and showcase how his craft could, make some significant change in the world. And as I said, we really want to kind of open up this process of teaching people how to weave, teaching people about the plastic that which it's made from. It's made from recycled plastic, which is post-industrial waste. which we collect from factories. We then remelt it down into strips, and then it's hand woven by Nano. Yeah, it's super sturdy. It's solid, and we've been these are showcased now in museums and a few stores and stuff like that. And yeah, so far we've had some pretty good feedback from them, and people are really being drawn to the story in general of how we're making it, and it's celebrating craft culture, the ancient techniques of Bali, but it's also, circular design product. We make it from waste, and we also offer a recycling service. This hopefully will not break anytime soon, but let's say in 50 years or 100 years, who knows what's going to happen to it, and hopefully we'll still be around. But right now we're offering a repair service and a recycling service for anyone that buys our goods, so it kind of goes back into the loop. Wow. So that kind of circular design ethos is a big part of what we do, and we run sort of case studies here with space available. And the case study that we're in now, SCO1, which is our first case study, is all around exploring the notions of circular design. Where the material comes from, how it's made, and how it can go back into the circle once, so nothing gets wasted. And all the offcuts that we get when we're making things, again, we put it back into the system, we make new things out of it. And that's very much what we're trying to do, showcasing how, there's nothing necessarily wrong with plastic as long as we're putting it back into the system we're against single-use plastic, of course, but plastic does have a place, I feel, in design, but it has to be managed very carefully. And it has to be made, very, as green as possible, let's say. So, and it is achievable, but we're just not quite there yet. So we're now looking at this and saying, okay, well, how do we get there? Because if we were to ban plastic completely today, well, what are we going to replace it with? There's lots of sort of bio alternatives which aren't that great. Or do we go back to what we used to do and using lots of paper? Well, that's not very good for the environment either, because that's why plastic was invented, because we were chopping down too many trees and it was becoming too excessive, how much paper we're using. So it's always, another problem always arises. So I feel it's like if we could reduce the amount of plastic that we're manufacturing, and if we could sort of put it back into the system, so it's this closed loop type of scenario, then I think it could, potentially be okay. But right now, we're not promoting plastic, we're trying to clean up the environment by using plastic, which is getting landfilled, the ocean or ocean bound, and working with local recycling facilities to do that. And we're very much about, making space for nature. That's our thing. Like when people say, oh, what is space available? I say, well, first of all, it's about making space for yourself as an individual, because that's something like I personally wasn't doing in my life. On a personal note, I was just wearing myself out, becoming a bit of a overworked zombie. And, I took the pandemic as a moment to really step back and reflect and make some positive changes in my life. And I made space for myself. And what I realized in that process was if you don't make space for yourself, how can you make space for anybody else? Because it affects your family, it affects your community, the world, the universe ultimately. And once you make that space for yourself, you can then make space for nature. So right now, we're looking at ways of, ecological design, taking the waste out of nature and looking for the alternative to, this sort of waste crisis that we're in. So that's very much the sort of meaning behind the Space Available name, which we get asked a lot. Well, it's a name actually that I've liked for a long time, and I was actually in Jakarta one time and just saw a big billboard, and I was like, oh, Space Available, it's kind of a cool name.
That is what we see on.
Yeah, it's a cool name, and that was years ago. And then when the pandemic hit, and I was thinking about setting up this new platform, I was looking for a name, and then that popped up into my head. And then at the same time, because the kind of commercial world of Bali stopped,
right.
You've got hotels on every billboard, you have beach clubs on every billboard, and the shortcut here, the famous Canggu shortcut, which is an absolute mess. All of the sort of commerciality had gone because everybody was closed and nobody could afford to pay however many thousands of dollars to have a billboard. So they were all empty, and they just said Space Available. And I thought, okay, well, this gives us an opportunity to step back and sort of make space for ourselves and the environment, and that's what sort of led to the name, and it just worked, so it's stuck,
Let's go back a little bit. Give us a little bit of a background. Obviously, I met you in a different capacity. I'm not sure if being in Bali sparked this whole project, or was there a switch for you? Or was there a period where you had to also unlearn things? Like, what was that switch for you?
Yeah, well, it was very much a gradual evolution, really. Sort of 2010, I co-founded LNCC, which was a or it's still there. It's a fashion store, ultimately with a big e-commerce presence. But we did a lot of different cultural things in the space. There was a gallery space, there was a record store, there was a sort of secret nightclub and listening space in the back. It was a book, that was in London. That was in London, sorry. And, you know, I was like 23-year-old and, you know, had this huge successful, we got voted #1 store in the world by Complex in 2012. We were in New York Times, and it was, you know, I was living the dream, let's say. And then at the same time, I was young and I was kind of growing as an individual, and I was just feeling quite unsatisfied about what I was doing, and asking a lot of questions in terms of, what is it I'm trying to achieve, and, you know, is this important or not? You know, I've got this store, and it's, you know, what we're trying to say. And we were buying loads of stuff, and we had lots of different partners and, let's say, financial targets to hit by investors. And it just felt very wasteful. We were like, okay, unless we get to, you know, X amount of million, then it's, you know, we've got to buy this. So I was buying, so I was going into the showrooms, and it became quite apparent that it was just, well, we're not going to sell all of this stuff. And I've just got to buy it, and then it was just going into sale, you know? And that was the cycle, but that was the cycle of the whole of fashion. It was like, buy as much stuff as you can afford. Don't worry if you don't sell it, because it'll go into sale and it'll sell in the sale or whatever. New season, you know, new trends, all that sort of thing. And it just felt very disposable, and just made me question a bit more deeply about what my motives were behind, you know, wanting to work in fashion and all that sort of thing. And I love, you know, fashion as a term of self-expression, and I do love, you know, certain products and things like that, but I think the industry as a whole, I kind of didn't really agree with the way things were being run, and I was obviously right in the middle of it. So that was the first sort of wake-up call for me, was that period, which is, you know, 11 years ago now, and, you know, started getting a lot more into thinking a bit more spirituality about, thinking more into the realms of spirituality and what I want to do in my life. And in that period, I had my first boy, Isaac, my first son, and we were living in London. And we thought, you know what, let's move to Bali. We'd been here quite a few times, and it felt like a place I could come and learn more about sustainability, you know, reconnect with nature, because right here, you know, we're sitting in the midst of nature, and, you know, people here, the Balinese people, are still very, very connected to nature. So I felt, you know, this sort of life and energy here could really kind of suit us. So we moved here in 2014. And that was at the beginning of me really trying to, change the way I was working and try and create sort of bigger impacts in what I was doing. And when I arrived, I met a great guy called Ronald Achille, who founded Potato Head Beach Club, which was then just a beach club in Bali. And he kind of offered me a role as a creative director. And he liked a lot of the ideas that I was bringing in with, you know, sustainability, and he had a similar mindset as well. So we kind of thought, okay, well, let's use Potato Head as a platform to, you know, explore zero waste and, you know, trying to do things better and all these types of things.
And what year was this?
This was in 2014. So yeah, man. So we had a lot of fun doing that, and we really wanted to change the perception of what kind of sustainability or regenerative culture really means, rather than being a sort of boring topic or a thing that people were scared about. Back then, people were quite scared of talking about it. It wasn't such a big thing as it is now. And we wanted to try and show, you know, do it in a bit more of a fun way. So rather than sort of preaching and all that sort of thing, we really wanted to sort of explore sustainable living through the lens of culture and creativity and all those sorts of things. So yeah, we kind of used Potato Head, which is now a cultural institute in Bali, as a platform to instigate, you know, sustainable practices.
Okay, let's talk Bali.
Yeah.
And what it means to you, what it's meant to you,
yeah,
and what you see moving forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bali to me is a very, very special place. It's otherwise I wouldn't be living here. And I think the reason it's special is, like, I think on a sort of like energy level and on a sort of invisible level that you can't really sort of touch or feel, or you feel it but you can't touch it. And I felt that as soon as I arrived here, like as soon as the plane landed and I walked out, I just sort of felt something before I'd even...
The thing, my wife,
yeah.
When we land on the plane, when we land every time, it goes like, the Bali feel.
Yeah.
We always say essentially.
Yeah, it's something which you can't quite put your finger on, but you feel it when you arrive. So there's something magic in the air, let's call it. So I kind of felt that when I arrived. And I think the people here are incredible, and the way that the culture, they're living, you know, the cultural sort of landscape here, the way they're living their lives, the ceremonial aspect, the rituals, and the kind of aura that the people give off, I really connect with. And as I said, there's a real deep connection to nature here, and it feels like the qualities of the past remain, yet the possibilities of the future is very much a part of the island as well. So for me, that juxtaposition of like almost, almost looking back into like old times, and you can get nostalgic and go, wow, people back then did it this way. And Bali still has that magic about it, yet it still feels very progressive, and people are looking to Bali now from all over the world for answers to how things could look in the future. So I feel we're right in the middle of that right now, and that makes it quite special. And Bali's been really good to me and my family, and I don't want to just be a foreigner sitting here, trying to, consume and do things, not in the right way. So for me, it's okay, well, what impact can I have while I'm here in terms of, sort of the social aspect with the team that I'm building? How can I give back to them? How can I help educate the community? And also how can we elevate, local designers, local craftspeople, and ultimately, help spread knowledge that I have in circular design, in new systems thinking, to help clean up the environment. So the environment is a big passion of mine in terms of like looking after nature, clean, keeping it clean, living in harmony with nature, and I feel that's something which the Balinese can teach us in a big way. But also I think that's when the collaboration aspect comes in, where we're human beings, we're all on one planet, we're all here together. How can we sort of unite and collaborate to build a better future ultimately? So that's kind of what I'm trying to do while I'm here. And of course I want to enjoy it as well, and surf and do all the things that we like to do, raise a family and have a good time, and hopefully try and spread as much positive energy as we can while we're here ultimately.
Amazing.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Daniel Mitchell. I'm the co-founder of Space Available. We're here in Canggu, Bali, in the Space Available HQ, and this is Globetrotter.